Welcome to Lead Pods, the official leadership podcast from USMB for pastors and church leaders, where our goal is to increase our impact together.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 152 of the USMB Lead Pods. My name is Matt Ersman, and once again, so glad to have you with me today. We've got another good one today. I'm excited to be joined by two guests this week. Today we have Ann Graber Hershberger with us. She is the returning guest. She's back with us. She is the current U.S. Executive Director of MCC in the United Central Committee. And as you'll hear in just a few minutes here, she is in the process of stepping down, retiring, and passing the baton on to the new Executive Director. So today I'm excited to introduce you to Rukshan Fernando. He will be the MCC U.S. Director starting July 1st. And I think you, like me, will be really impressed with Rukshan. He has a really impressive background and resume, and I think he's a great fit for leading MCC in this next chapter. So today we'll remind you a little bit of the history of MCC and the work that they do, but we'll also look ahead to the future of MCC under Rukshan's leadership and some projects that are currently underway. And we also talk about leadership transitions, as a lot of people are talking about succession and transition in leadership. Ann and Rukshan have I think they've done this really, really well. So I think a lot of us can learn from how they've chosen to go about this. After my time with them, I'm excited about the future of MCC. There's some good stuff happening, and I think you'll feel that way too. So let's take a quick break to hear from this week's sponsor, and then we'll get right to my conversation with Ann Graber Hershberger and Rukshan Fernando.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Mennonite Central Committee. This summer, join MCC's School Kit Challenge and help us collect 30,000 kits for kids around the world. School kit packing is a great way to nurture a love of learning in tomorrow's leaders and peacemakers. So plan ahead with your family, friends, Sunday school, or VBS to get packing by August 31st. Learn more at mcc.org/challenge.
All right, friends. Well, today I'm excited to share some really great news, some updates from our friends over at MCC. It's a time of transition there, but there's also a lot of really exciting things happening over there. So I'm excited to dive in with two guests today. Today we're joined by Ann Graber Hershberger. Ann's been on before, a couple years ago already, Ann, but it's good to see you again. So welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, great to have you with us. And then we're also joined by Rukshan Fernando. He is the incoming new U.S. Executive Director of MCC starting in July. So Rukshan, we're so excited to get to know you. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Matt. It's great to be with you and looking forward to talking with your audience.
Yes, we're excited to get to know you a little bit. So Ann, let's start with you again. It's been a few years since you were on. You started your position as executive director at a time when that was just really nice and smooth. There was nothing exciting going on in the world. 2020, you decided to jump in and take this new role, doing humanitarian aid at a time when the world was kind of on fire. So we're talking to you today because you're wrapping up your time. You announced your retirement. You're kind of passing the baton on. So tell us, the last few years, Ann, how have things been, and what kind of led you to this time of transition in your life?
Well, I would say that at my age in life, it's time to transition. I retired at one point from teaching 33 years at teaching nursing at a university, but I had a little more steam left, and I've always loved MCC and worked with MCC on boards and also as a service worker since the 80s. And so this has been an incredible way to feel like I'm coming back home, because I started right out of college working in international service. And so it felt like a closed circle to be able to come back and work again with the church in international and also domestic ministry. And so it's the right time. And of course, after COVID, it feels like it's been on the way up in terms of challenges. Although I will say there's many, many challenges in the world today, so there's always a new challenge. But I feel good that this is the right time, and God has led us to the next director in amazing ways, and so I feel very much at peace for being able to spend some time resting and with grandchildren.
Yeah, well, that's great. And our audience knows MCC. We talk about them pretty frequently, but just in case we have some newer people, MCC, Mennonite Central Committee, can you just remind us what all kind of work you do, and maybe even a little bit, just a reminder of what exactly the U.S. Executive Director does and is in charge of?
Sure. So MCC started 106 years ago when churches in the U.S. and Canada responded to calls from churches in what is now Ukraine, then Russia, to help in time of war. They were starving. And so Mennonite churches and Mennonite Brethren churches gathered together and said, we can reach out together. And so that's been that since then, that we work across Anabaptist denominations to reach out around the world. We are now in 45 countries, working around the world with about 1,200 people in Canada, U.S., and the countries where we serve, and work in relief, development, and peace in the name of Christ. And the identity is that we are we are a ministry of Anabaptist churches worldwide.
Very good. And again, I know there's so many projects, all kinds of different work. Can you give us, again, just a high-level example of what is, relief effort, peace efforts? What kinds of things does that mean, kind of day-to-day, that we're involved with?
Let me talk about the Mennonite Brethren Church in Congo, where I visited a couple of years ago. It's a large church, and that Mennonite Brethren Church has reached out to their own neighbors who are displaced by violence. Mm-hmm. We have supported with them. They are a partner there, and we've supported school kids to children who are displaced, as well as their hosts. Mm-hmm. Water projects, agricultural projects, renting land so people can farm in their new areas. We do a lot of work with Mennonite Brethren churches in Ukraine as well. Relief right now more than anything else because of Rukshan, you might have others in line.
Yeah, we are engaged with churches in Malawi as well as work in Ukraine. I mean, we have 7 sponsoring denominations, of which Mennonite Brethren are one. Mm-hmm. And we do work with Anabaptist churches across the world, being a ministry of Anabaptist churches. But we also, in our relief development and peace work, we're working with churches across Christian Orthodoxy. And so that it comes through long historical partnerships that we have in the 45 countries that we work with. So while we absolutely, our center is the Anabaptist church, the breadth and depth of that, our work also encompasses churches from outside that tent, if you want to call it that way. And our peace work also works across religions. And so, for example, we've done some important work bringing Christians and Muslims together in Indonesia. And that kind of speaks to the peace theology that's one of the sort of the centerpieces of Anabaptist theology. So we have been in the countries we've been in for many, many years, and we tend to be the kind of non-governmental organization that stays and develops relationships and digs in deep into those communities versus other non-governmental organizations that typically tend to move countries where the money may be. And so that kind of incarnational ministry that we have employed, I think, has created some vibrant relationships where we have learned from people all across the globe that we serve, and they have learned from us in that mutual exchange of growth and development in the name of Christ.
I think that's one thing that's great about MCC. I think you have kind of a unique opportunity where you're unashamedly Anabaptist, you're unashamedly Mennonite, but you're also involved in communities who are in crisis. And so you're given a chance to work together across denominational lines, across religious lines, just to serve people who need help, right? And so I think that's one of the great things that you get to be a part of. So I think that's really great. So we kind of just tossed you in here, Rukshan. I'd love to get to know you a little bit because you've got just from what I've read about your background, pretty incredible story. I think you're uniquely qualified and gifted to be in this spot. So we kind of mentioned this earlier, but Anne's retiring and you'll take over, I think, officially July 1st. So you're technically, right now, you're the associate or?
Yes. Yeah.
So associate executive director right now, but can you just give us a quick overview of your background, Rukshan, and I'll kind of chime in with some details, but tell us kind of your story and what led you to this point.
Sure. I think, first and foremost, sort of I'm guided by 2 things. I'm guided by my Christian faith and how that has obviously shaped me fundamentally, but also my extended family. My family, for the most part, lives in the country of Sri Lanka, which is a country that is a multi-faith, multi-ethnic country, very, very small Christian population. And my family has been sort of in leadership of Christian organizations, World Vision, Youth for Christ, Operation Mobilization in Sri Lanka. So from an early age, I saw the patriarchs and matriarchs of my family serving others that were at the margins, and how that was intertwined with the gospel. And so that led me to a career in social work. And so here in the United States, I've worked in different parts of the country, Indianapolis, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, in Washington, D.C. area. My career has been, it's been a career of left turns. So I have fallen into things, and I've had my own plans, but then God's been throwing me curveballs, and I've swung and missed, and he has led me to places that I had not expected, that have been unexpected joys. So I had a 20-year career in higher education, in Christian higher education, moving into leadership, and I thought that that was going to be my future. But things didn't work out in higher education, and then transitioned into this role at Mennonite Central Committee, which was like my first love of international development. So my background, it's Christian leadership. It is working in nonprofit organizational spaces. It is leading people. It is bringing people from diverse backgrounds towards a mission. And so also growing up between cultures, I think allows me to uniquely serve the bridge building work that MCC does within our sponsoring denominations, but also globally and domestically. So it's wonderful to see the experiences that God has given me and how that is going to lend into this work at MCC. So I'm really excited and really also fortunate to have worked with Ann for the last 1.5 years, who has been an incredible mentor, sponsor, and guide to me. And I think I'm even feeling confident moving in this position partly because of Ann's support of me.
Very cool. Yeah, I was looking through your resume earlier, Rukshan, and you're humble, but you've got, let me just make sure I've got a couple of things right here. So you got your doctorate degree in community economic development. You've got experience in social work. You teach people how to do nonprofit management. You said 20 years in the Christian higher ed. You've done work with affordable housing in the U.S., right? So, I mean, honestly, that's like a pretty legit resume for working with MCC. Those are the kinds of things that we want our leaders to know how to do, right? So has relief work specifically kind of been on your heart all along, or is that kind of another turn in your story, or how did that, obviously your history shows that you have a heart for that.
Yeah, I mean, I was planning for the first several years after college to move back to Sri Lanka actually and work for a relief governmental organization, like, for example, like World Vision. But that timing never worked out. I have done work with them back home in Sri Lanka. But I think, as you talk about my experience, one of the things that I have found that God has been kind of placing me in is this work between people and between sectors between government, business, nonprofit, between people, Christian, non-Christian denominations. And, then you think about this word central committee, right? And you think about the history of who we are and what Uri Miller did, that he brought people that weren't supposed to be together, that typically didn't spend time together as Anabaptists, together under a higher calling of mission in relief development and peace. So that work between sectors, domestically, internationally, in nonprofit, in affordable housing, in international relief and development, in higher education, I think I've been able to learn a lot about how people think and how people treat and engage systems differently. And I'm looking to lend that experience, that sort of gift and treasure of that experience, hopefully to extend and enhance the work of MCC.
Yeah. Well, I also appreciate that you have obviously a diverse background. You've got international experience. And I think for a lot of Americans, we just don't know our history, our geography as well as we should. Sri Lanka, you grew up in a time of civil war, right? Can you just remind us what you experienced as a child and what kind of led you to come into the States eventually?
Yeah. So actually I was born here in the US. And my parents did the antithetical thing of went reverse migration.
Okay.
And many people told them that they were making a bad decision to go back to Sri Lanka. But I moved back when I was 10. It was a significant change, but a couple things that shifted in my life. First of all, in my neighborhood next door was about 60 families of slum dwellers. So that had a big impact on my life. And then my father chose to be a contract doctor with the Sri Lankan government, working in some of the significant areas that were impacted by the civil war. But even growing up in the city, at times we would have curfews. There were security checkpoints to go to. There were suicide bombings, one that happened about 5 minutes from my house that impacted one of my friends' homes. Wow. So seeing the impact of civil war, seeing also what war does to people, and how that indirectly impacted people around me had a significant impact on me. So it helped me to understand, through that privilege of understanding that, it helped me also to understand how it feels like to be on the margins. Because when I came to the US, I lived in rural Indiana for many years. And being a person of color in rural Indiana at times was not easy. And I was able to interact and understand the reality of some people because of my own experience that otherwise wouldn't have been afforded to me if I'd lived in a place like New York City.
Yeah.
So those kinds of narratives and experiences have given me such a breadth of experience and story that I'm privileged to have, where I've learned about people living in rural Indiana that live on the land, farmers, that kind of experience, as well as in Southern California with the long history of like Japanese Americans, Mexican Americans, Chinese Americans there. Mm-hmm. With now the Anabaptist community, obviously all across the world, but also specifically in Lancaster County. So that has been such a rich tapestry of learning for me that I look forward to learning more about.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Anna, I want to bring you back in. Obviously, again, like Rukshan mentioned, you have such great experience and you've done a great job leading. You also mentioned at the top here that, COVID was a difficult time, but it's still a difficult time. There's a lot of things that MCC is currently involved with that are horrible and difficult. And there's just, things that a lot of areas that need our attention right now. As you kind of look ahead and looking at, Rukshan's leadership, is there, I just like to hear from you. It sounds to me again like his background's just really great. I'm sure you at least had some say in his leadership. Can you just kind of give your take on his experience leading up to where MCC is headed in this current season?
When I was hiring for an associate executive director position, which Rukshan, I think, well, God led through a variety of ways for him to even know about that position, being in Southern California, and I'm hiring in Pennsylvania. And he was in higher ed, and it just clearly, to me, was God leading. When I saw his resume come across on the last day of the position was open, I just felt a sense like I got to talk to this person, and so I felt from the beginning that Rukshan needed to be at MCC for this season, for what he brought, as you've heard, that MCC needed the kind of the broader, deeper experience with running larger agencies than I had, or that people right around me had, and bringing this outside knowledge, but an outside knowledge with the same and deepening commitment to the church and to God's leading us as an organization. And that was a combination that felt so right. And from the beginning, when he started, we just had fun together. I learning from him, and then he learning from me, and then all of the kind of the perhaps, what shall I say, comical kinds of fails that one might, when you're in a new culture, such as this particular culture here, that we can play with and have fun with. And I've just really enjoyed the last 2 years, and I felt a great load off my shoulders when he took that position and we started working together.
And I want to spend most of our time talking about MCC in the future. I know you guys have worked together on a new plan that we'll dive into in just a minute, but we also, like, this podcast is mostly Christian leaders listening. And so before we jump deep into MCC, you kind of mentioned it there, and I'd like to talk a little bit about just transition. That's a difficult thing for leaders to know when it's time to leave, and then how do you handle the transition, and how involved are you after you leave? And that's just a messy thing for leaders of all kinds. So, and again, I'll kind of start with you. how has this process gone for you? And have you learned any lessons so far that you feel like we could learn from your story, just from the leadership transition part of this story?
I think I would say that part of what helps is that I have not done just this one thing my whole life. So MCC is being an executive director of MCC US is not my identity. It is a service role I was called into, and therefore it is all things are temporary. So that makes it easy. This is not who I am. I am a child of God outside of this. So I can, while I will deeply miss many things, and I'm trying to learn how to grieve those appropriately, it's not hard to let go.
Mm.
I was told by somebody many years ago that retiring is not biblical, but passing on your responsibilities to others is biblical.
Mm.
And so I have practiced that for the last 20 years as I taught nursing earlier, and I had a former student come to me one day and say, "Anna, I want your job." And I realized, it is time to pass that on to that person. And then kind of hanging around and saying, or when new ideas come, and my role I felt was to give the history. This is why it was done this way, but that doesn't mean it needs to stay that way. There are new reasons to change. And so for the last number of years, that's how I've looked at anything I've been involved in. And the same thing now when Rukshan or others have ideas of like, well, here's the history of why it came this way, but boy, it's crazy to continue it because now things have changed, and this is a good idea to move forward with this, that I can let go of those things.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that. And Rukshan, kind of similar to question to you, you've been in this role again almost 2 years, I think, and so you're kind of ramping things up to take over in July. What about you? How has this transition been for you, and what kinds of lessons have you learned along the way so far?
Well, I think at the end of the day, who we are as leaders is outgrowth of the spiritual disciplines we're practicing in our lives, and the ways that we are spiritually readying ourselves to make that transition. And so, as I reflect on Anne's transition, her spiritual maturity has allowed me to step into her role in July in a way that there's freedom, that there's joy, and the directions that I may take the organization that may or may not be different than her, that is a sense of a celebration and not any sort of verdict on the ways that we lead. Because there are different seasons of leadership for different seasons of the organization, right? And so Anne's strengths and who she is and the DNA she brings to MCC led to some real positive shifts for MCC in terms of our work, specifically ways of engaging, maybe sponsoring denominations that were maybe more disconnected from MCC maybe 6 years ago. So that's something I would say. Also, as I think about transitions, for me, it also creates opportunities for Anne and I and others think, how are we sponsoring, elevating, tapping on the shoulder people within the organization that are, millennials or that are younger or that are in positions further down the organizational ladder that now have the opportunity to step up into something new and to grow and strengthen their leadership capacity. So it's not just a process of change for both of us. It's also an opportunity to create spaces for others that I think have hit that season of their leadership for this season in the organization. So I think Anne and I view succession as not just happening at the very top of the organization. It's across the organization. And so that's, I think, a really exciting thing, because it's having conversations potentially with people to say, I see this in you, and are you willing to move into something different? I know it's going to be a stretch, but we believe in you. And I think that's always exciting to see people respond to that and take up the call.
I also think that as leaders, if we have a deep sense that the Spirit is working in everybody involved, and I trust the Spirit is working in my life, leading me on to something else, to a different phase of life. I trust that the Spirit has worked in Rukshan, like in the board, as they were looking at what kind of leader they needed and wanted, and anybody involved in that process. I trusted that God was working in that process, and that can give a leader, either outgoing or incoming, a deep sense of peace.
Yeah, definitely. And, these leadership transitions are never seamless, flawless, but I think it sounds to me like you guys are handling this really, really well. I like that you've had a couple of years to work together. I think that's really smart and intentional, I'm sure. So it's from the outside, it looks like you guys have handled this really, really well. So kudos and well done. That's good. Okay, well, transitioning back to MCC. So I know, again, as we're looking ahead to the future, I think you guys have worked together. There's a new, like a 5-year plan that you're working on, and I'd love to dive into that a little bit. So either one of you, tell us kind of what's on the brink, on the horizon for MCC. What are you excited about? And tell us more about this plan.
Well, just a bit about the plan. We're calling it as our strategy blueprint, and keep in mind that this is for all of the MCCs. So there's MCC Canada, MCC West. There are regional in the U.S., regional MCC offices, and provincial in Canada, as well as our international program, which we share with MCC Canada. And we've gone through a very deliberate process with the boards and with staff to focus on, again, who we are, where we're going. So this blueprint isn't like, it's not sort of plan 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are strategic directions which we have had, over a number of years. We actually had our 4 directions of increasing capacity for the church to work with each other, deepen church relationships, integrate peace building, and responding to weather changes around the world and agricultural kinds of things. Those have been going on, but who we are and how we work at it is what we came around with. So we came up more with outcomes for those. We came up, I think, for me as a leader, some of the most important things we worked at are what are cultural enablers and new behaviors that will help us execute this plan, and what are operational enablers for staff to be able to make this happen. So it guides most of what we do.
And Matt, part of that is, as we've been talking about the strategic blueprint, we've been shifting some of the conversations about culture and about how we make decisions. And, one of the people that we brought in, a gentleman by the name of Chris Bosch, talked about all of us being the traffic. So sometimes it's easy for us, not just at MCC, I'm sure this happens at other organizations too, where we talk about the organization as it's out there versus we being part of the organization. Mm-hmm. And just that shift in conversation that all of us have the opportunity and agency to change culture. Mm-hmm. And I think as Anna and I have been observing these conversations around the strategic blueprint, that has been one of the things that really sticks with people. And it allows people to sort of think, okay, how in my position, as I think about this 5-year plan, given that I'm part of the traffic, how can I be a solution-focused individual as opposed to being problem-oriented? And so that's been a conversation we've been trying to shift in terms of how we talk about MCC and the MCCs, whether it be in the United States and Canada.
Yeah, very good. And again, I did just a little bit of reading before our conversation today, and I know the idea of keeping Jesus at the center is part of this plan for you all. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about that, because I know MCC's mission, it's, if I've got it right, relief, development, and peace in the name of Christ, right? So there are a lot of relief organizations out there, and they all do great work. We don't want to malign them, but MCC is unique that it's in the name of Christ. And so can you talk about that a little bit when you're working on these projects all around the world? How important is it that we keep Christ at the center of this? And actually in practice, how do you even do that?
That is a challenge, and it's easy to veer away from that into whatever the need is that pops up in a particular day or week or month or year. But one of the things that I try to remember is it's not me keeping Jesus at the center. Jesus is the center. My job is to keep attention focused on that.
Mm.
We have for many years in MCC, we've had a set of what we call principles and practices that is our identity, our mission, our vision, and we also work every year. Well, back to the identity, mission, vision, principles, and practices. That's used in orientation. It's used to guide for the next year. It's going to be guiding our chapel services. It's used around the world as part of focus about who we are, kind of coming back to our identity. Another practice that we have is every year, the Canada ED and the US ED, along with our communications people, choose a scripture passage to work with for the year. And this year, it's Philippians 2:1-4. And we have it's amazing how it's a short book, and this is a small passage. But boy, you can dig in deep into what it means to being one mind, one spirit, doing nothing out of selfish ambition, but thinking of others more than ourselves. Those kinds of things allow us to have these conversations about how we do what we do and who we are as we do it.
Can you add to that, Rukshan? I'd kind of like to hear your heart behind that too. How important is it to keep the Christian element of this relief work? And again, in practice, if you're literally just helping people in the middle of war or after a disaster, like how do you actually incorporate Jesus into that kind of tangible work?
So I think, first of all, it comes to the internal work and the kind of spiritual rhythms our people have as part of their work. Mm-hmm. So that could be, rhythms that we have as a community with chapel, with devotions. I think one of the things that I've really appreciated about Anne and the last 2 years that I've been here, and something I look to continue to do, is really spending more significant time as a community in prayer, and seeing and believing in and weaving into the life of the organization the power of prayer. Because, as people that grew up in the world, as we all do, it's very easy to forget that prayer is a powerful process that shapes us first. And then shapes the organization. So that's something else I would say. I think also reminding ourselves that at the front piece of who we are as an organization, we're not an international relief and development organization alone. We're an association of Anabaptist churches. So we're deeply connected to Christ's body in the work we do. And in fact, in places around the world, the ways that we engage first and foremost is through the church. And so that is something that's different than another type of relief and development organization that is Christian, but doesn't necessarily have that significant commitment to the bride of Christ, which is the church. So that intentionality continues to be there in the future as it was. And then I think the other piece is the kinds of people we hire. We have hiring screens, and two of those screens relate to an active Christian faith and then an active involvement in a Christian community and church. And so weaving those people into the work of MCC, I think, is also really important to maintain that Christian identity and Jesus-centeredness that you're talking about.
When you talk about, we are a professional, at one level, a professional relief and development organization. We follow, we're very appropriately professional in our roles around the world. But that is our second identity. We talk about first identity, second identity. The first identity is, as Rukshan said, an association of churches, a ministry of churches. And that is our first language. Our first language is spiritual language. But we all have to learn this other language of a profession of relief and development, and figure out how they mold together, but remembering that the first language is primary, and we have to translate sometimes that language into the professional relief and development communities out there.
I think that's such an important work, and this is such a interesting time in human history where there's so much war, there's so much poverty, there's so much pain, there's so much hurt. There's a lot of pain in the world. And as Christians, our heart breaks. We want to be a part of solutions. But at a time when the world is so divided, it feels like you can't say or do anything without offending somebody. Even this always bogs my mind, but the idea of social justice is some reason controversial sometimes. That's Christians shouldn't be a part of social justice, which I don't understand that. But could either be talking at just the kind of the touchy moment that we're in, and how do you lead, especially as as Christian leaders in a time when it just feels pretty touchy? I don't know. Either one of you want to be brave enough to jump into that a little bit?
Let me start, and
Yes.
then you could fill in those gaps. But it goes back to language.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Christ is present in all cultures. Christ transforms and critiques all cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, we have to figure out how to speak in a language that is not off-putting or offending.
Mm-hmm.
So I can talk about something that somebody might label social justice. It's actually the same thing, but it's Matthew 25, feeding the hungry, feeding the naked. And so in some settings, I need to use different language that speaks to where their heart is, always assuming that we can connect around what Jesus, our love for Jesus and our following Jesus. We can connect there and then try to figure out how does that relate in this setting or with you, even political views or over here, another approach to political views.
Mm-hmm. It's very wise, Anne. That's really good. What would you add, John?
And I think some of that conversation, that potential, I would say, incomplete understanding that social justice is separate from what, from evangelism or, the gospel in senses, is where you sit and how you've seen the world and how you've experienced the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, because of who we are constantly being sanctified in our walk. And what that process means for me is open to curiosity and open to different points of view, and then laying that before who we are as believers. And so part of the joy that has been for me is to interact with people from a variety of backgrounds all across the world in my life. Mm-hmm. And that has given me a deeper curiosity of the fact that, getting back to Anne's point, people may use different language. People may start at different starting points, but what's the intention behind their desire? And to maybe focus on the directional intention of their desire versus getting the right language, or even getting it right in terms of how we do the work we do. Mm-hmm. And there'll be times where there's going to be really, really honest differences in view of how we do the way we do. And that's important. And it's important to have differences of opinion. But bringing people together and growing in that curiosity, in some senses, is a larger outcome, because it sees us understand Christ and how he thinks about the poor, the marginalized, those that have less than us, in a different way. So it's a journey. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say it's easy. And often, sometimes we find ourselves in the middle of those conversations where you leave no one happy. But I think Jesus, if we look at the life of Christ, he left everybody unhappy. And he frankly offended everybody, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have to be open to the fact we don't have to be offensive, but we have to be committed to our convictions and engage that aspect of peacemaking, not just out there, but even within the Anabaptist community.
Yeah, absolutely. We need more qualified Christian leaders in the middle. So I'll join you there. Well, we need more and more of those people. So, okay. Well, our time's going really, really fast. I want to spend at least a few minutes talking specifically. Again, we've got mostly MB church leaders listening. So what do you want MB church leaders to know right now? Like, are there ways that we can, as church leaders in our individual congregations, help MCC directly? What can we do to help serve, raise funds? I don't know. Like, talk to the MB pastors listening right now. What do you want them to know, and what can we do to work together?
Oh, there's a lot we can do to work together. Let's maybe start with thinking about your youth. There are programs in MCC that would help ground youth in terms of international work. People are interested in international work. We have programs for young adults to be abroad, for younger young adults at 18 to 20 to be abroad in a discipleship 6-month program. We have year-long programs. There are material resource centers around in different places where your churches are, where families, Sunday school groups, youth groups, retired folks can meet and work at packing relief buckets. Some places meat canning, all kinds of kits, just amazing different kinds of things that are in response to what people ask for. Not we just don't get an idea and send it, but it's clearly in line with what people want. Rukshan, what else would you offer?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to highlight the School Kit Challenge. So your audiences, your pastors can go to mcc.org/schoolkitchallenge. It's an excellent way to work with Sunday schools, young people, to create these kits that are going to go all over the world and give kids like themselves important educational tools and stuff to go to school. My Coins Count is another program that we do for kids that has a long history in our organization. And then for your pastors, we've just been talking about contentious issues. We've been talking about, bringing people together. And one of the things that I heard was a number of pastors that were leaving their roles during COVID. Yeah. People feeling burnt out, people feeling really challenged by some of the ways that the political environment here in the United States was impacting them personally, but also impacting them in terms of how to engage their congregations from the pulpit. And so I just want to highlight 2 resources that we have created called Peaceful Practices and Embracing the Beloved Community. Peaceful Practices and Embracing the Beloved Community. And you can find those resources on our website. And this is a week-by-week cohort-based, you can do it in Sunday schools as well, ways of how do you engage difference. In this case, in a Mennonite Brethren church. And having that tool to do that, I think would be also a way that we would love to serve your audience and the Mennonite Brethren community in general.
I would like to invite groups of pastors to say, we would like to learn about how the Mennonite Brethren Church in Congo or Malawi, probably can't be visiting Ukraine right now, but places like that. How are we connected? Could you develop a learning tour for us to go to one of these countries to see the work that our Mennonite brothers and sisters are doing there? It'd be great.
Yes, agreed. I love those really tangible things that we can all do. And real quickly, I want to highlight, we did an episode about the Peaceful Practices course a couple years ago, and that was one of my favorite episodes. So listeners, if you missed that one, I think it was all the way back in 21. So if you go back in the archives and listen to that one, that was a good one. But man, just from the MB family, we appreciate the work that you all do and that you all represent from MCC. It's just such important work, and we're proud to be a part of it. We're fans of all the work that you do. So thank you for the chance for us to work together and for the conversation today. It's been great. So, Ann, I heard you say you're never going to retire. You're changing. So that's great. But thank you for your years of service. It's been great chatting with you a few times, and thank you for your strong leadership. And Rukshan, I'm excited to get to know you and hopefully work together and look ahead to some really great years together. So
thanks so much, Matt.
Yeah. Any kind of closing thoughts before we wrap up today?
Just thank you, Matt, for offering this opportunity for us to share. And I really appreciate it when I've been able to visit and be in churches around the U.S.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to be on a podcast with Ann. I guess maybe one of my bucket list items can be checked off now. But yeah, as the new executive director, I look forward to engaging the MB community, looking forward to connecting with churches, both individually or more collectively. Really grateful for the Mennonite Brethren leadership and their connection with MCC.
Well, thanks again, both of you, for your time, and look forward to many years of partnership. So thanks to you both, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thank you.
How can we be more effective in carrying out the Great Commission? That question is shaping the future of our USMB community. Right now, we're discipling leaders through lead cohorts, developing church planters through a new residency program, and preparing to deploy multiple couples to start new churches. Our vision ahead is bold, supporting 5 to 10 new church plants every year. You can help make that possible. When you give to USMB, you invest in disciple making, leadership development, and church multiplication so more people hear the gospel. Give online at usmb.org. Your partnership truly matters.
All right, Ann and Rukshan, thanks again so much for your time today. Great conversation, and thank you again for modeling a healthy succession plan and good leadership. I think there's a lot there that we can all learn in our own leadership after hearing their stories today. A couple quick reminders as we wrap up today. I do encourage you to head over to mcc.org. Lots of great information there about what they're up to these days. And as Rukshan mentioned, and I think one of the ads today, they have that school kit challenge that's happening right now, so you can learn more about that if that's something that your church, maybe your youth group or kids ministry might be interested in doing. So I encourage you to check that out. And in our conversation today, we mentioned the Peaceful Practices episode of Lead Pods from the past. If you want to go back, that was from 2021, episode number 37. So if you'd like to learn more about that, I encourage you to dive into the archives and check that out. And speaking of the archives and the old episodes of Lead Pods, I'm going to give you a little teaser. This summer, there's going to be some exciting new things coming to Lead Pods. And I think I might keep it just at that. I'm going to keep you in the dark, leave it a mystery. But I want to let you know we're working on some fun things for this summer to kind of upgrade things and update a few things around here for the podcast. I think it's going to be really, really great. I'm sure you're on pins and needles. You'll have to wait just a few more weeks, but it's good stuff, so stay tuned. All right, once again, thanks to Ann and Rukshan. Thanks so much for all of you for listening. Hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you again real soon here on Lead Pods.
Thanks for listening to Lead Pods. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our show wherever you're listening today. Learn more by visiting usmb.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next time as we learn more practical tools to increase our impact together.